What's your most horrifying home alone story? When I was 9 years old, my parents thought it would be a great idea to leave me home alone. My parents wanted to go out for a nice dinner for their anniversary and decided that I was old enough and responsible enough to be left alone for a few hours on a weeknight. We owned a fairly protective dog at the time, so it all seemed fine. They leave, tell me to lock up and to call if anything happens. I do so and proceed to party around the house like a rock star. I had the whole dang house to myself and I could do whatever I wanted. In my mind, all I could think was heck to the yeah. Halfway through a Sailor Moon marathon, I get a knock on the door. I'm confused because it's only been about 2 hours and they said they probably wouldn't be back till around 10. I guessed Mama had left something she needed again and swung by to grab it. My front door is a system of 2 doors. A super old, thick wooden door and then outside of that, a screen door. My dog is raising havoc at the front door, but I just pull her back to calm down. She had a tendency to be reactive to most noises, so I just brushed it off and opened the first door to see who it was. It's not my mom at the door. Instead, it's some middle-aged man I've never met before in my life. Puppo is now basically feral, so I keep the screen door firmly closed and a hand on her collar as I ask the man what he wants. He starts on this weird convoluted story about how he has 2 young twin daughters and how they got into a fight and that one of them ran away. Now this man claims that he believes his daughter is hiding in my house and would like to come look for her. I tell him no such girl is here, and why does he think she would be here in the first place? He goes on into a long story about how this was the house they first lived in and how it's the one she was born in. He explains how it was a safe place for her and would be the most likely place she would run away to. It was really the only other place she knows and he desperately needed to come inside to get her. I start to feel kinda weird and regret opening the door. I know something weird is going on and inform the guy that he must have the wrong house. I told him this house was built and has been lived in by my family since its construction. My dad was born in that house. After my mom and dad told his parents they were pregnant with my older sister, they gave it to them as a present to begin their family. I told him he must be mistaken cause I know all this to be fact. Hell, there were pictures less than 10 feet away from me on the wall of my dad and uncle playing in the front yard in the late 70s. By now my dog is growling like crazy and dude is getting kinda agitated. He insists that I don't know what I'm talking about and that if I would just give him a few minutes to search for his daughter he could be on his way. The latch on the screen door was broken and I was putting all my strength at the time and holding my dog from the door. He opens the screen door with one hand and with the other reaches for my closest arm. My crazy dog goes absolutely ballistic. She uses all her strength to lunge at him. She gets a hold of his hand, and bites down. Now the man is yelling and confused. He pushes back against the screen door and slams it shut to get my dog off of him. Sadie gets pushed back indoors but is still raging. I quickly slam the front door, lock it, and chain it shut. I run around the house and make sure all other doors and windows are locked. Then I hunker down in the bathroom hyperventilating and wait about 15 minutes till Sadie's growling has calmed some. When I eventually go and check outside, no man or his car. Both long gone. I call my parents and tell them they need to come home right now please. When they get home I recount the whole story. Dad goes to check the front door and sure enough on the screen door inside of the house is a large smear of blood. Sadie was treated like a queen and got a whole steak for her to eat on that weekend.
I found a hidden camera in my room. On June 15th, I heard a talking device in my room. It said something somewhat quietly, and I couldn't understand it. I jokingly texted my boyfriend that something in my room was talking to me, thinking it was just some device I might have left on or something. So, we both just disregarded it and let it be. Everything was fine until Sunday night when I heard something clearly say, "The camera connection is successful." I thought it was strange, so I started looking around and went through literally everything in my room. I moved my dresser forward a bit but could not find anything. I then called my boyfriend about it, and he told me that if I found whatever it was, to just throw it away. So, I continued my night like normal, played some games, and then went to bed. The next morning, I wanted to watch some TV on my Roku, but apparently, when I moved my dresser looking for the sound, I knocked it down. So, I had to move my dresser more and look completely behind it. I had a pile of stuffed animals leaning against the dresser, so to avoid them falling over, I moved them out of the way. When I did, I found a home camera plugged in behind my dresser, and it was on. I quickly unplugged it and called my mom, crying. She seemed freaked out yet somewhat calm. She told me that we would figure it out when she got home, but I had work and was going to my boyfriend's house after. So, this camera was in my room for 2 weeks, and at this point, I was freaked out. Nobody had been to our house in a while, and the only people in the house were my 2 brothers, mom, and stepdad. We have deadlocks on our doors, so there's no possible way of someone breaking in. It has to be one of my very own family members, and I don't know how to find out who. My boyfriend and I have the camera, but my parents are telling me to bring it back because they paid for it, and they think I should just let it go. They want to set it up in our living room because that's where it used to be to see the front door. So, my parents are being really chill about this situation and aren't trying anything to find out who hid it in my room. They only care about the fact that they paid for it and want it back. My boyfriend and I want to take it to the police, but my parents are telling us no. I care more about my mother's feelings than my own situation, but I also have a little sister, and I want to protect her too. I'm afraid they will kick me out or treat me badly if we do go. I'm staying at my boyfriend's place because I'm terrified to go back. Someone in my house has been watching me without clothes and everything. My guesses are that it's either my teenage brother or stepdad, but no matter who it is, I'm pretty sure my mom is covering for them.
Paramedics, what incident will traumatize you for the rest of your life? It was a hot summer day. I'm a brand new EMT, working my second shift ever in a small rural community. I've just finished my first year in paramedic school. It's 10 p.m. and a storm is starting to roll in. My partner and I are parking the ambulance for the night, having done no calls for the day, ready to head home for the on-call portion of our shift. Just as we're leaving the shop, the tones go off on our radio. I answer, 4 Alpha 1 copying tones. Dispatch responds, copy that 4 Alpha 1. You're being called to a motor vehicle collision 10 kilometers north of town. Casualties unknown at this time. The situation is still unclear. All we know is a Dodge Ram collided with a Volkswagen Jetta. We assume the worst and preempt backup for a casualty count of 8. 4 for the Dodge and 4 for the Jetta. Then the rain starts to come down hard. We arrive on scene to find the Jetta right side up in the ditch with its rear passenger door missing. It's 50 feet away, laying in the middle of the highway. The back end is completely smashed in. The black Dodge truck has a damaged front end. There are 2 passengers in the truck, both stable and walking with minimal injuries. The driver of the truck is screaming, "I'm so sorry. Oh my God. I didn't see the stop sign. I'm an EMR, please let me help." I tell him, sit down by the truck and wait there, please, and ask if he or his friend are hurt. They're okay, thank God. I begin to triage the Jetta with my partner. He takes the passenger side, and I take the driver's side. The driver is an older father. He's outside the vehicle screaming, "Help my baby. Please help my baby." He's holding an infant car seat with what appears to be a 4-month-old baby. Damn it, I say to myself, quietly. The baby in the car seat is awake, with absolutely no signs of injury. The father could be injured, but he's screaming, which means good air exchange. He's also walking, so he falls down the list of priority patients. I take the baby and place her in the back of the ambulance, out of the rain. It is pouring very hard now. At this point, 2 fire engines have arrived, and I delegate 1 firefighter to watch the baby. I turn around to see the mother now out of the Jetta and walking. She's very disoriented and screaming, "Please help my baby." But again, good air exchange and she's walking. I direct her to lay on the ground with her husband and await assessment. I open the rear driver's door to find their 14-year-old daughter alert but crying and holding the right side of her abdomen. She's bleeding from the head, but she's able to answer my questions appropriately, and she does not appear to be in critical condition. The mom comes walking back to me at this point. "Please help my baby." She's no longer talking to me. "Ma'am, your baby is in the back of our ambulance, out of the rain." "No. My other baby." I hear my paramedic partner. Taking her pulse, he tells me. He turns his attention to the third kid, "Look at me." I look across the rear passenger Jetta to see him looking at me. I can tell he's doing his best to remain calm, but I can see a serious sense of urgency in his eyes. He's holding a manual C-spine stabilization on a 4-year-old girl, who is slumped over in her car seat. No response. I'm starting to freak out a little bit. I've had the training, and I'm confident in my treatments, but only on a mannequin. Okay. Listen to me. Go to the ambulance. Grab the life pack and the spine board. We're going to hook up the 4 lead to this little girl. Hurry. I tunnel vision on the 4 lead, going as fast as I can to get the leads attached. Snow on the grass, smoke over fire, I tell myself. It's a mnemonic to easily recall limb electrode placement. Smoke over fire means black lead above the red lead, and snow over grass means white lead above the green lead. I repeat the saying over and over as I attach the white lead, then the green lead, the black lead, then the red lead. I look at the rhythm on the monitor. Pulseless electrical activity. Yes. There's hope. I take a step back and take a deep breath. I look at the little girl. Oh God. Please no. Her right frontal and temporal portion of her skull is completely smashed in. Her brain is very visible. Her right orbit is smashed in, and her right eye has been pushed up and back toward her ear. It's rotated outward, looking at me, with no signs of life to be found inside that pupil. She's bleeding very badly from the head. Her right shoulder is obviously dislocated anteriorly. We extricate her from the Jetta and get her spine on the backboard. We secure her and carefully carry the board up the muddy, slippery ditch onto the stretcher. We put the stretcher into the ambulance. We close the doors and begin getting to work. We hear 3 knocks on the door. The side door opens. The first of 3 extra ambulances dispatched has arrived on scene, and the paramedic from that ambulance is asking us if we need help. "Yes, we do," I responded, trying not to panic. He tells his also very brand new EMT partner to stay on scene and treat the remaining patients, including the baby, until the other ambulances arrive. We get a firefighter to drive our ambulance, and we get off scene with our 4-year-old patient. I begin CPR on the little girl, while an IO is placed and an endotracheal tube is attempted. It's difficult to get the tube in. There's so much blood. He suctions. Throat fills up. Suction. Throat fills up. Eventually, he gets it in. Still, irregular heart rhythm on the monitor. We push epinephrine and start bolusing fluids into her. We're 1 hour from a trauma center and 20 minutes from our local hospital. We make the decision to stop at our local hospital to grab blood and then continue to the trauma center. We wheel her into the local ed. The nurses are taken aback. They've been notified of a 14-year-old girl coming in by ambulance, stable. They are not prepared for a 4-year-old in critical condition. They collect themselves and grab the ed doctor, and we get this little angel into the trauma room to start blood infusions. CPR has now been in progress for 30 minutes. Still, irregular heart rhythm. First infusion of blood has gone in, and we begin to package her back up to transport to the local trauma center, which is 35 minutes away. The nurse yells out that they have a pulse. I confirm. Pulse. A good, strong, regular pulse. Thank God. One of the nurses steps out of the room, unable to keep herself collected. I can hear her crying outside the door. The doctor orders the X-ray tech to bring in the X-ray machine. We all step out of the room. At this point, I realize just what has been happening. It's hard to explain the state of disconnect that occurs when treating a pediatric patient, or any patient for that matter. It wasn't until I stepped out of the room that I realized I had been working and sweating for 45 minutes straight to save a 4-year-old girl. I'm relieved to see the doctor come out of the room, holding an X-ray print of the girl's cervical spine. He puts it up to the light. C2, smashed. C3, mush. C4, mush. C5, shattered. The doctor makes the call to disconnect everything. There is nothing that can be done for this poor girl. At this point, the other ambulances have arrived and have wheeled both parents into the ER on stretchers. The doctor has us bring both parents into the trauma room to say goodbye to their little angel. The father is holding her left hand, alert and crying, "I love you. I love you so much." The mother is holding her right hand, confused and disoriented still. "Why is my little girl so cold? Her hands are so cold. Please. Someone get my little girl a blanket. She's going to get sick." Then the doctor gathers everyone together, all 7 nurses, 4 ambulance crews, and our supervisor. And he says, looking at me and my paramedic partner, "I noticed you didn't put a C collar on this child. How are we all to know you didn't kill this girl for not putting a collar on her?" I stood there petrified. I was too sick to look the mother in the eyes.
Those who have been kidnapped, how did you get away? I had been visiting family on the outskirts of Gary, Indiana when the most horrifying night of my life occurred. I was staying in a hotel, waiting for my cousins to pick me up for the evening. Eventually, I heard someone at the door. Expecting a knock at the door, I didn't bother looking through the peephole and just opened it. To my shock, I was met with a .22 revolver pointed at my face, held by a young black man. He had tattoos on his neck and dreads. He told me his name was Anthony and that he was there to kill me. Panicked, I backed into my room and sat on the bed as he ordered. He yanked the phone cord out of the wall to tie my hands behind my back, though he didn't do it securely. While he rummaged through my belongings, I tried reaching for my phone, which I knew was under the pillow behind me. I failed. When he returned, ready to take me with him, I started screaming and kicking. I'd hoped to alert the neighbors' dogs and get them to bark to draw some attention to the scene. Unfortunately, nothing happened. That's when he hit me, causing a concussion. He went back to searching my things, giving me a moment to attempt reaching the door handle, but before I could, he turned around and directed me out. He led me across the parking lot to a van parked opposite my room. He instructed me to sit on the floor between the seats. Then he forced my head to rest on his thigh, applying direct pressure to my neck with his forearm. We drove around aimlessly, eventually stopping at a random house near a gas station. He made me lie face down on the driver's seat while holding the gun to my head, stepping outside to relieve himself. Afterward, we went to the gas station, where he purchased blunts and cigarettes. No one seemed to notice I was beaten, bloodied and wearing socks in the dead of winter. We continued driving as he smoked Mary Jane and shared details about his life. He repeated his name, mentioned his kids' names, and spoke of his financial struggles. He also made it clear that he didn't really want to kill me. It then dawned on me that this could be a gang initiation. This was something that was often talked about in the area but remained more of an urban legend. Now it was happening to me, and I had to find a way to survive. Desperate, I told him I had recently discovered I was pregnant and that if he released me, I would vanish without a trace. Since no one knew I was there, no one would realize I was missing. Surprisingly, this seemed to strike a chord with him at first. However, the abuse continued, accompanied by countless shut the hell ups as he relentlessly pounded my back. This is when he fractured a vertebra. We eventually arrived at an apartment complex I recognized when I caught a glimpse out the window. He ordered me to climb into the truck area of the van, where he proceeded to take advantage of me 4 times. By this point, it was well into the next day. After he finished, we drove to an apartment in the city of Chicago. There I sat on the couch while children played around my feet for 8 agonizing hours. Miraculously, I managed to grab a brief 40-minute nap in that apartment. I assumed the children were his, and the woman present was his girlfriend or wife. Strangely, they appeared completely unfazed by my presence. The woman even cooked me a meal, and I had the opportunity to eat before we departed. When we left, we drove around for a few hours until it was dark. Suddenly, he abruptly stopped and ordered me to open the passenger door. He told me to run, so I did. Realizing he had dropped me off across a field from my hotel, I sprinted to the office and called the police. Unfortunately, before the police arrived, he returned and took me and the receptionist hostage at gunpoint. As we drove away, he failed to ensure that we were hidden on the floor. Thankfully, I managed to signal one of the arriving officers, leading to the man's arrest after a brief chase. Since then, I haven't returned to the area. I suffer from PTSD, brain damage, and chronic pain due to my back injury. I have undergone 8 surgeries to alleviate some of the back issues, but the pain persists. I guess some scars are meant to linger.
Paramedics, what's the most horrifying thing you've witnessed on duty? The call came in just after 2 a.m., alerting us to an unidentified male acting erratically on a residential street. As a paramedic working the graveyard shift, I'd seen plenty of odd behavior, but something about the dispatcher's tone told me this would be different. Explaining the situation, the officer informed us there was a naked distressed male who was covered in blood. The report said that he had been wandering around the street yelling at cars and carrying a knife. My partner and I arrived on scene with lights flashing, where we were met with an officer who said that the guy had dragged 2 naked children down the road and tried to throw them into traffic. The officer then calls for more backup to confront the man while I call the fire chief. We need to get more people to help handle the kids and to stand by if any of the officers got injured by the man. In about 10 minutes there are 5 officers, my partner and I, the fire chief and 2 more paramedics. In total it's 10 of us. When the police arrive, they coax the man to get near the ambulance so that they can assess if he is injured and requires immediate attention. The man begins thrashing violently at the sight of the ambulance, unleashing a stream of unintelligible curses punctuated by screams for our deaths. His bloodshot eyes seem to glow with a feral madness as 5 of us drag him into the ambulance. In the ambulance, the initial officer, and my partner and I, all sit in the back to check out the man. However, the second I close the door, the man decides to get belligerent. He punches me in the nose and lunges for the officer's gun. We react quickly, and hit our panic buttons on our radios, which give off an alert to any units in the area to respond. The officer gets a handcuff around the guy's hand but can't attach it to anything. The guy is resisting with superhuman strength. When the back doors of the ambulance opens, there are 4 more officers, the fire chief, and the other 2 paramedics. All 7 of them dive onto the guy and attempt to restrain him. The fire chief gets hit with a wild handcuff in the teeth. All 10 of us could barely keep the guy down. 2 of the officers decide to taser the man and we finally get him restrained to the gurney. His vitals indicate a raging substance OD, so my partner readies a sedative while I attempt to hold him down with some of the other people with us. In a flash of movement, he sinks his teeth into my forearm and the pain erupts in a hot blaze. I cry out, wrestling away from his grip as my partner plunges the needle into his thigh. After we give him the sedative, 2 officers had to ride in the back of the ambulance with their tasers out to make sure he doesn't try anything again. Once we dropped off the man to the hospital, everyone who was at the scene had to be quarantined in a ward for several hours. Apparently, the guy was in contact with dangerous chemicals from making crystal M in his apartment, and anyone in contact with him could be carrying the same chemicals around in their clothes. His wife and kids had also been naked because he was making the substance in their apartment. In a rage, he had brutally beaten his wife when she begged him to stop, which was why he was covered in blood. Then, he turned his fury upon his own children. He was so angry that he decided he was going to kill his kids and had dragged them outside. That's when he was confronted by the officer. He was charged for putting everyone in his apartment building, over 100 people, in danger, and received a huge sentence.